Hi everyone, I'm here to talk with you about some rhetoric. Sorry, I had a frog in my throat there for a second. I want to talk a little bit about the rhetorical situation, and then I want to move into talking about rhetorical structures, and we'll talk about rhetorical devices in a future video. I would say this is probably part 1 of 3 or 4 really quick videos just for me to talk through some of these rhetorical concepts with you and get you further acquainted with our course. And I think my primary goal today is to help you to see these concepts so that you can start to look for them in the essay that you'll be using in your rhetorical analysis. You'll be making your for sure decision on the primary source. And so some of the concepts I'm going to talk about very briefly, I would definitely look for them in the piece that you're using in your rhetorical analysis, that primary source that you're using for that essay. And additionally, you'll see some page numbers in these slides. So for now, maybe jot down some of the page numbers you're interested in looking at to get further definitions of these concepts. I'm going to try to make this video really quick so that you can hear me talk about the concepts, and then you can look up the ones that you need to understand a little bit more. All right, let's get started. So let's start with the rhetorical situation. The textbook has some information. You see the page numbers here. And the textbook puts the rhetorical situation in the context of speeches, public speaking. But I want you to know that I find the textbook a little bit limiting, that it's not talking more about the rhetorical situation in writing. And we definitely use the rhetorical situation to define our writing as well. As a writer who's chosen a topic or a subject, I must use the rhetorical situation to think about what my purpose is. As you know, your purpose is your reason for writing. It's the reason why you feel you need to write, to say something about the topic. And you also have sort of an angle there. You might be wanting to teach, you might be wanting to share, reflect, argue, persuade, analyze, many other purposes I haven't listed, but you have a definition for the way in which you will approach the topic. And then another really important rhetorical situation component that I know you already know about is audience. You've been practicing with purpose and audience in your writing since you were probably in the 2nd grade. But the thing I want you to remember about audience in this class is that there's more than one. Often it's a multiple. You might have a primary and a secondary, so I'll probably ask you to think about that for future essays. Who's your primary audience? Who's your secondary audience? And then other aspects of the rhetorical situation that we'll talk about in future assignments: genre and exigence we will cover in essay 2. Context and medium or media we'll talk about it with essay 3. And when we get to the multimodal assignment, essay 4, we'll talk about modes of expression. So I'll be distributing some handouts in the next couple of weeks so we can deepen our understanding of purpose and audience, but just wanted to remind you about what they are and how they relate very closely to what the writer is trying to do with the subject or the topic. All right, let's talk a little bit about rhetorical structure. We're going to talk about 3 types today. The first, the most basic, is a thesis and the body. And in the body of an essay, usually we have the 3 appeals that show up: pathos, logos, and ethos. You see the definition of the 3 appeals to the reader in parentheses, pathos being an appeal to the reader's emotions or feelings, but also to their values about the topic, political values, personal values, ethical values. Logos is the use of logic and reasoning, usually tied very closely to the use of evidence, or fact, or statistics. We often feel that logos is somehow the most rational of all of the arguments, or all of the argumentative appeals. Argumentative appeals is what I was trying to say there, of the 3 of them. But it really isn't the best way, I don't think, to connect with your reader. I think having a nice mix of the 3 matters. And then ethos, which is the ethical appeal, has 2 components for me. Both the reader's sense of trust in the writer, but also the reader's sense of the writer's use of sources. Has the writer found the best sources, the best evidence, the best definition of the concept being written about? So that's the basic structure. I want to talk about 2 more. The second one is use of deductive reasoning or inductive reasoning. And deductive reasoning is the argumentative structure, the essay structure you as a writer, as a college writer, are most familiar with. It really requires that you have a position or a claim early in the essay. And it really means that you're sort of drawing a conclusion already and then applying that conclusion to your body paragraphs and any examples or evidence that you have found. And so you see that that conclusion is made ahead of time. And then the conclusion is repeated in the conclusion of the essay usually. So if you need to learn a little bit more about deductive reasoning, check out those page numbers. But I'll let you know that deductive reasoning is based on the rhetorical concept of the syllogism. It requires that a writer makes a major premise, a minor premise, and then a conclusion. And often when we write college essays, we leave out the minor premise, which is usually the assumption that the whole paper is sort of based on. So we'll learn more about syllogisms later in the semester, but wanted you to think about the idea that you don't have to use deductive reasoning for your rhetorical analysis. So that means that you would have made a conclusion about the quality of the primary source, the writing in the primary source, before you even start presenting the examples in the body paragraphs. You could use inductive reasoning. It's the opposite. It flips deductive reasoning on its head. It asks the writer to present an examination of what it's found in the primary source for your rhetorical analysis as an example. It asks the writer to present an examination of what it's found in the primary source in the body paragraphs, and then the conclusion, the thesis comes in the end, comes in the conclusion of the essay. So check out those pages in the textbook and see if you think inductive reasoning would be a good way for you to approach your rhetorical analysis, and let me know if you have more questions about that too. And the last thing I'm going to present to you is the classical structure. It's called the dispositio. It means the arrangement. I call essay structures also like blueprints or outlines or a map of your essay. I can think of the parts of the essay when I think of the word arrangement. So here are the parts. The exordium is the introduction. The only thing I want to say to you here is to think about your college essays as having larger introductions than one paragraph, because you can do that. The narratio is the background information on the topic. It provides the context on the topic. It can include narration in first person, third person, anecdotes, any background info, definitions. So I think a really important part of a good essay has context in it. It has to. But it's called a narratio in the classical structure. Partitio is the way that the writer can predict to the reader how the topic will be handled. And sometimes this is handled most obviously in speech giving. In speech making, you usually say to the reader and to your listeners, and I will cover these topics, and it kind of provides an outline. You can do that in essays as well to let the readers know what parts of the topic you'll be covering and even what parts you won't be covering. Confirmatio is pretty much the body paragraphs. It's defined as the part of the essay that, the part of the arrangement that is giving reasoning and evidence. But I want you to know the other two appeals, pathos and ethos, can be included here as well. Refutatio. I have some great words on the screen to help you understand what a refutation is, or a rebuttal, or a counter argument, but it's essentially the writer making sure that other perspectives are addressed in the essay. And then peroratio is the conclusion. And the piece, or I should say the part of the essay that really moves the readers to understanding, maybe reflecting, and maybe even moving to action. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. We will be talking about Rogerian arguments and Tolman arguments. Those are two other structures we haven't talked about today, sorry. And then want you to know that I will upload this PowerPoint so you can see some of the other concepts we'll be studying in future weeks. But don't go past this slide for the rhetorical analysis. What we've talked about for the rhetorical analysis is done. So if you're going to look at the other slides, please know that we'll be applying some of those other concepts to future essays. All right, if you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to talk to you about how you can apply these rhetorical concepts to the primary source you're using for your rhetorical analysis as you start to dissect it and figure out what your writer has done to write that primary source, that essay, what arrangement, which appeals, audience, purpose, all that good stuff. All right, you all take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.